in which we had like thrown ice cubes on the street to play street hockey with, because that was the ice. And then at one point my brother was, I don't know, he just like slapped, and somehow my lip got cut with his thing. So I remember running into my house with my lip bleeding, and I remember my mom being in the kitchen and me saying, I want a Band-Aid, and her putting paper towel on. Yeah.
I don't like my question. I just want to say that. Which form of play taught you the most for your older years? None forms of play? I don't know.
Game or anything.
Duck, duck, goose.
Why?
I don't know why, I just said it, okay? Okay, this is why. Because I realized this recently only because I worked at summer camp with tiny babies. And Duck Duck Goose, well, most games, really, you have to wait to be picked. And that's a really hard thing to learn. And I think that games teach you that.
Nice.
That's right.
What form of play from this time do you most want to transfer to your children / the next generation? Slash.
Dodgeball.
Interesting. I would say that something I feel I used to be better at is finding humor in funny situations, or maybe situations that normally wouldn't be funny. I feel like as a teenager you like laugh at everything, whether it's funny or not. It's just like a defense mechanism, and everything's funny, and like you see someone walking down the street and you're like, that's hilarious. You just like, everything's a joke.
That's true.
But it's true. And then, like you grow up a little bit more and you go to college and you start having slightly more intelligent humor about maybe not so funny conversations or conversation things. But long answer.
A lot of humor in this.
Long answer short. I feel like I want my kids / the next generation to not take things so seriously and just to find humor in the everyday. Do I have to tell a story now too?
Anything. That was good.
Like one time, Bella and I were in the car and
That
she
was funny.
hit a man. Not very hard.
A tap.
Tap. And it was hilarious.
But it was funny because he thought it was funny. He
He
like,
was sort of like,
he was like, ha, and then kept going.
waved at us. And like, I think as an adult, I wouldn't find that very funny.
No.
I already feel like if it happened this year, I would be like, that was really bad. Yeah, there you go.
Throw it in the garbage.
Okay. What was a distinct turning point in your life before age 18? That's a big question.
That's huge.
So I guess like this one, I feel like this is like my default answer for anything about like my childhood. So I wish I could find something, but I'll just go with like what my mind goes to first. So it would be when my dad died. That was a pretty distinct, like if he hadn't have died, I would be a totally different person probably, because I would probably live in a totally different city. I would have had a totally different family. And just like a person in my life who would be a big deal and who isn't there. So And I guess like that question for me, like I think about a lot, like what would like not like in like some sort of melancholy way, but just sort of sheer curiosity, like what would my life be like if my father hadn't passed away? And so yeah, I mean that is an event that I think really shaped who I am today. So that is a distinct turning point in my life before the age of 18.
When was the first time you heard about war? I know when I was born, there was like Bosnia and Kosovo, but I was going to school with kids who were like refugees from both sides. But I don't think I knew what was going on. I don't think I was like, yeah, there's a Bosnian, there's a Croatian. And in a weird way, I don't think they did either. I mean, I don't know when the first time I like heard about war was, but I find it interesting that I was like going to school and surrounded by it before I even knew A, what war was about, and B, that it had ramifications on like children who I was going to school with who had like left their country and their families because of this thing I didn't know. If that's not too much of a non-answer.
Oh, Callahan, we're supposed to pick a point.
Oh yeah? Okay.
Hold that one for next time.
Sure.
And now pull out a from Janet in the bottom region.
I was
Yes,
dealing with my own
no,
wrath in my head.
No.
I suggest
Yeah,
you see
so
that.
it's a different, it's tape 3. Mm-hmm.
You gonna like that?
Yeah.
When did you first realize you could do harm?
Oh.
Yeah. This does boil down to one like crucial moment, and it's a story that I've considered several times. I don't know if I'll tell it well, but like I've come back to this memory many times and thought about how weird it is. I'm typing it up now, but when I was 8 years old in grade 3, I told my best friend Paul Hubachek, who had been my best friend since I was 3 years old. I told him that there was this girl in the class that I really had a crush on, and this was the first time I really had any significant feelings for a person, like a girl, you know. And I told him not to tell her. And he told me that he was going to tell her. I was like, Paul, no, you wouldn't do that. You're my friend. You wouldn't, like, betray me like that. And then at recess one day, he said, I'm going to go tell him. I'm like, no, you're not. And then he went off, and he ran off, and I saw him go off. I saw him talk to her, and he was like, I told her. And I was like, what? And I felt all sorts of things, and embarrassment, and, like, guilt, because it was, I don't know, it was easy to feel guilt at that time. I went to a Catholic school, and I was very much integrating those sorts of self-relation habits. And I still remember when the girl, Kathleen McClellan, came into the classroom after recess, came right up to me, pointed her finger in my face and said, do you like me?
Oh my god.
And I blew up my cheeks in embarrassment, which was my habit at the time, and I shook my head, and I was on my tippy toes, and she said, good, you better not. And, like, I started to feel pretty bad at all that. She turned around and she left. I later realized that she totally liked me too, and neither of us knew how to deal with it. But at the time, like, my world was falling apart. And I remember performing this, like, profound self-compression process where I was just absolutely filled with, like, this destructive impulse all inside me. And I walked over to the coat hooks to, like, take my coat off and, like, you know, transition to get into the class and stuff. And somebody came up to me, I It might have been Paul, it might have been another friend, I don't remember this part. And they're like, Cal, what's going on, man? And I just like held onto the coat hook and I like put all of my negative chi into my fucking hand, into my little 8-year-old hand, and I was holding onto the coat hook and I ripped it out of the wall. And I remember holding the coat hook in my hand right after that. And like all the like the wood splinters were coming out of the screws and stuff. And I was like, no, I cannot let this happen. You know what I mean? This is too much. There's great power within me and I cannot let myself lose control like this. I can destroy things. You know what I mean? And I like deep inside my soul poured like cold water over myself or something and experienced this nearly mystical catharsis of just like wiping out my emotions and then being like, no, that's enough. So that was the first time I realized that I could do harm, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
That's
Story.
incredible. No kidding.
Wow.
Wow.
Feel like me.
You better not.
You better not. I know it still rings in my head.
Oh.
Wow.